Hey there, you're here with
Amber,
Tala,
and Alana. Welcome to
Connecting
the
Dots
Podcast.
Welcome to episode 2, and we're so glad to see you. Today we're here with Miss Dawn Kelly, and she is our current teacher who teaches our CLE/CLC course that we're really inspired by. She's going to go into her past and tell us a little bit about the things she's struggled with and who it makes her today. Without further ado, let's welcome Miss Dawn Kelly.
I'm a secondary school teacher in Vancouver. I teach grades 8 to 12, mostly clothing and textiles and fashion, and some foods. And I teach what's called career life education and career life connection, where I help students discover all of the skills they need to live a successful life post-secondary school.
Okay, so what does being yourself mean to you, and how do you think it could help you connect with others?
Being myself is living into my values. So my two core values are courage and integrity. So if I look at courage, whenever I'm going to say anything or do anything, my inside voice asks me a question, which is, and what would a courageous person do? And what's the next right or best step into courage? My second value is integrity, and integrity means that I walk the walk and I talk the talk. So, same as with courage, I say to myself, my next vocalization, my next step needs to be into integrity so that I'm walking the walk and talking the talk and that I am my word.
So can you think back to your time as a student or a 16-year-old, and what was it like?
I found high school really difficult. Being an introvert and being shy, I found it difficult to make friends. I also knew that in order to go to post-secondary, so to university, I needed to have a part-time job. So my job was my number one because I needed to make money, and number two was my schoolwork. So if there was any time left over after that, then I could socialize or play sports or do what I wanted to do. And again, being shy and being an introvert, I didn't make that happen on a very often basis.
Would you say that you were still an introvert once you kind of left high school?
Totally. I think an introvert is something that one is or isn't. I think there's a range from being an introvert to an extrovert. And although my job is extroverted, I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert. And if I'm with the right people, I can be very chatty and very comfortable and very engaged. And if I'm not, I'm usually quiet.
So when you look back at your teenage or your high school life, did you have trouble fitting in, even peer pressure?
Oh, for sure. I didn't realize that fitting in or belonging was something that I needed to choose. I would do things, I would say things, I would wear things because I wanted to have a particular peer group. There were limits to things. Of course, I didn't do everything they were doing, but I really felt like an outsider and I really wanted friends, but I wasn't sure how to make them.
Have you ever felt like you had to change yourself to be accepted, and how did that make you feel?
For sure. I mean, I think I did that for most of my life where I was a people pleaser. So I would give you lots of extra value added things as a person, trying to convince you that I would be worthy of your friendship. And at some point in my life, I realized that if I had to sweeten the pot all the time to get you to like me, that it wasn't worth it. Either you liked me or you didn't like me. And as I began to like myself and understood who I was and what I needed to do, then I needed people to do the same thing.
So you mentioned about how it was hard kind of fitting in. So what was the hardest part about finding a group of friends you truly connect with?
Being able to be honest. When I grew up, there wasn't social media. There weren't cell phones. So any of the conversations that took place on a regular landline after school. We lived a ways from school, so I had to take a bus home. So I wasn't hanging around after school. And I wanted to be like my other friends. I thought that coming from a family with lots of money and lots of stuff and a big house and all the things that all the other kids had is really what it was to have a happy life. And as I've grown up and left home myself, and I realized exactly what one needs to be happy, and happy isn't a destination, happy is a direction.
So like as a teenager we have like a lot of worries and stuff like that, right? So like what's something you worried about as a teenager that turned out not to matter at all?
I worried about my looks. I worried about, which most girls do, their hair, their makeup, their pimples or lack thereof, their weight. I didn't worry about my clothes because I had a part-time job and I sewed. So I had the best clothes and I could buy shoes or jackets or jewelry. So I had the same thing as other people. And I thought that's what kids needed to fit in and belong. So I felt on that level I did. And yet I really didn't feel like I belonged.
As a teacher, you work with lots of teenagers. What's one thing teenagers worry about that's really not a big deal?
Students have an over focus on marks.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to because that's what we teach you, that you need good marks. It's really important to understand that marks are only used to get into post-secondary institutions. No one will ever ask you in a job interview, so what did you get in Math 10? No one will ever ask you when you grow up, so how did you do in physics? Learning to learn, learning to be a lifelong learner, learning to enjoy learning, those things all help us understand that school is a structure. It provides routine and discipline and an opportunity to learn skills and abilities on how to learn. And if one understands that learning is a lifelong goal, that we never stop learning, and we need to find things that we're really interested in and we want to know more about, that's what creates a really rich and vibrant life.
What advice would you give to someone who's like struggling to find their purpose in life?
You need to be always acting. So I find a lot of high school students are anxious. The best way to get out of anxiety is to do something, do anything. So with action, that's what decreases anxiety. Students need to make a plan. All people need to make a plan. Time management is really important. So if you're using a function on your phone to plan, or you actually have a paper calendar plan, you can slot things in, which becomes your time management ruler. It helps you to see that there are enough hours in the day. And if you're actually finding like there aren't, then the question I would ask students to ask themselves is, am I doing the things that are really important? And what are the things that are important to me? So if connection to my family is important, am I doing some things within my day that are meeting those needs? Is it important that I'm connected to my friends? What am I actually doing? Like, what are the actions associated with that? And am I actually doing them? If I am anxious about how I look, my weight, my activities, what am I actually doing? Do I have a plan? Rather than staying stuck in our brains and just ruminating and thinking over and over and over again about the same things.
You talk about working with students like who are going into post-secondary. What advice would you give someone that's really uncertain about what career path they want to take?
If students aren't sure and they do want to go on to post-secondary, or they think they do, then I tell all students, go to Langara, okay? Which for people who aren't living in Vancouver, it's a degree granting post-secondary institution where you can transfer your credits to other universities. I would say take a couple of courses that you think you will love, not based on anything else other than you think you will love them, and get a part-time job so that you've got some cash flow you're taking some courses you love, and you're learning things at a part-time job that you won't learn anywhere else. If you're finding that you are loving your courses, then maybe you take a few more courses second semester. If you're finding you're still loving things, then you may want to stay at Langara for an extra year and then transfer those credits to another university, if in fact that's what you want to do. I also say to students that they need to be aware of the fact that at least 85% of the jobs that are going to be available when they graduate don't even exist yet. Mm-hmm. That's exciting and terrifying. So to be spending time on figuring out what is it I like to do. I like to work with people. I don't like to work with people. I like to have a quiet space. I need to be in a space where there's lots of people. I like to work with my hands. I don't like to work with my hands. I like to problem solve. I like to do fine motor skills. All of these things are really important because then they will help to lead you to the things you like to do. Because most jobs, unless you decide you want to be a teacher, firefighter, a police officer, a doctor that have a prescribed path, you need to know what you love to do. And if you're not sure what you want to do, then I would say to kids, get a job and then go traveling. Do things outside of what you've done so you get some more life experience, so you get clear on what you think you like to do. And many jobs will have you learn in situ. So learn in the situation. My son is a good example. He didn't complete post-secondary. Steve Jobs didn't complete post-secondary. Bill Gates didn't complete post-secondary. I'm not saying don't go to post-secondary, but I'm saying there are many ways to learn that don't look like traditional post-secondary.
All right, thank you. So what do you think about the quote, what you're not changing, you're embracing?
Totally agree. If you say yes to something, then that's a vote for I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. If you say no to something, that's a vote for I'm not doing it, and it gives me the opportunity to do something else. Mm-hmm. We have a choice every time something presents itself in our life to say yes or to say no, or perhaps to say maybe. Buy ourselves some time to think about, is this a hard yes or is this a hard no? It's really important that we know the yeses in our lives and why we're saying yes, and the no's in our life and why we're saying no.
So like you've been giving out so many advices, but what is one piece of advice that you wish you had received earlier in your life?
I wish that somebody told me I was enough. I don't think any of us feel enough. I think for most of our parents, they do the best they can, and they parent usually the way their parents parented, or they give us what they didn't get, which isn't necessarily what we need. So if I thought I was enough, then I wouldn't be going around trying to find ways to increase my self-esteem. I would have just gone, I'm good enough. This is good enough. I'm going to work this hard. Today, this is good enough for me. My best self can choose a yes or a no, and I'm enough whether I get an A or whether I get a C.
So what is a piece of advice that you would have given like your 16-year-old self?
There's lots of time. Mm-hmm. As a student and in high school, my sense was I have to graduate. I can't take a gap year. I might never go back to school. I have to go directly to university. I have to graduate. I have to get a good job. And then I have to launch myself into life. And I hadn't thought about anything beyond graduating and getting a good job. When I graduated and I got a good job, then it was like the train came off the tracks. Now what do I do? I hadn't thought about anything else. And so it's important to think about we have lots of time, and we might not get that job, whatever that job is, immediately. And we need to be open and growth-minded to lots of different experiences, because in every experience, we're going to learn something. Either I really love that, or I actually don't love that at all, which is really good to know. Because when you know what you love, then you're going to look for more of that. And when you know what you don't love, you're going to go, I want less of that.
Yeah. Okay, so have you ever wanted to fix things about your partner that you didn't like? Did you do it, or how was like the result of it?
Absolutely. I think we all grow up thinking that we can change the other person in our life, whether it's our partner, our friend, our brother, our sister, our parents, and we actually can't. The only person we can change is ourselves. That's a hard fought and a hard won lesson. And I absolutely have tried to change my partner, to change my child. And once I realize that the only person I can change is myself, then I stay focused on myself. And if I'm asked for my opinion, I give it. If I think my son is in danger, or if I thought my partner who has recently died was in danger, I would say something. Or if I thought they couldn't see something I could see, but I wouldn't say it as a judgment or as a criticism. For my son, as a matter of fact, there are times when I will say to him, okay, right now I'm going to talk to you as a business person. And then I'll say, and now I'm going to talk to you as your mom. So I'll be talking about feelings. I'll be talking about relationships. I'll be talking about emotionality. And I need to say this to you as your mom.
So what's a moment in your past or current relationship that makes you still smile?
Memories are something that I don't think we talk enough about. I do have my students in Career Life Education, Career Life Connections, do a project that's called Who Am I, which helps them to excavate their memories. And when people die, my husband recently died, my brother took his life, all that's left is the love in the relationship and the memories. So the love doesn't die when the person dies. And so that carries on. And it takes a long time in our grief process to understand that. So as much as I am mired in grief, coated in grief, I live in grief. I also live in love, and I live in joy, and I live in lots of other things. And I will never get over my grief. It becomes part of who I am.
Okay. Have you ever had to overcome challenges in a romantic relationship? How did you manage it?
Yes, I was married once before, and we went to counseling as a couple and realized in the counseling process that our values in life were actually quite different, and they were not bridgeable. So that would be like me asking him, I need you to change, or him asking me, I need you to change. And we tried that, and that didn't work. So we both came to the conclusion that the best thing to do was to put an ending to our relationship so that he could go on and be his best self, and I could go on and be my best self without each other. Because when you know what your values are, you really want to make sure that you are in alignment with some of your values with your significant other.
Okay. So, when did you first understand what love means to you, and how did that experience shape your views on love?
It was really after my husband died. I read a book on attachment, which there's lots of research on attachment that goes back to Bowlby, who is an English researcher. And I read a book on attachment, and I realized that my kind of attachment is the hardest kind of attachment to have and to be in another relationship, which is avoidant attachment. And so in knowing that, it's really helped me understand how I love and how it's really hard for me to love. And in my relationship with my husband, who recently died, he was anxious attachment, which makes perfect sense because someone who's anxiously attached is seeking for someone who isn't that. And he was seeking for someone who was, he wouldn't have known what to call it, but being avoidantly attached, he was always chasing me for attachment. And because he was avoidant attachment, and I couldn't give it to him. I didn't know that I didn't know. So those are the things that we discover in our love relationships. We don't know what we don't know until we do our own personal work. So whether you're reading books, you go for personal counseling or coaching, I believe part of being a lifelong learner is being a lifelong learner about myself. So learning and growing and evolving and changing, and that we are with people in our lives who believe the same thing. Otherwise, it's really hard to remain friends and partners with people if they are, to use Carol Dweck's research on mindset, if they're fixed-minded, they just want to stay stuck where they are. And if we are growth-minded people, it's really hard to be in relationship with someone who's fixed-minded, because all they do is blame and shame and guilt, and they're not interested in learning and growing.
So do you think your past relationship make you a better or worse person now?
A better person. It could make me a worse person. I think it has made lots of people worse people who they keep remarrying or getting into relationships and they don't understand why the next person is the same as the last person. They're either the same or they're 180 degrees different, which is 6 of one and half dozen of the other. And if we don't understand that the only person we can change is ourselves, and we don't do some personal work to work on changing ourselves, then guess what? You get the same thing all over again.
All right. Thank you for doing this interview with us, and thank you for sharing your stories and experiences.
You're welcome.
Hey guys, welcome back to Connecting the Dots Podcast, episode 2. Thank you so much for listening. If you guys remember episode 1, we got Natalie here as a university student. She gave us amazing point of views for Addie. And also, if you guys remember Addie from episode 0, she is a girl who is struggling with so many problems of whether she's fitting in or not. Am I the perfect girl? Am I enough? She's always questioning herself and she doesn't know what she's doing. So for episode 2, we actually brought an amazing guest too, Miss Callie, that she also gave us a really good point of views. So what is it, Tala? Do you mind sharing?
Oh, thanks, Amber. Yeah, so this time we brought in a teacher who was able to actually share her point of view as a teacher and a student back in her days. And out of all the advices that she gave us, there's one specific advice that really stood out to us and I think would benefit Addie a lot. And that is telling yourself that you're enough.
Yeah, tell yourself that you are enough. Stop comparing yourself with others. Just be yourself and stop trying so hard to fit in, because that would just hurt your feelings. In episode 3, we will be interviewing Miss Rachel Curtis, who will be talking about her experience as a teen up till now. For example, she'll be talking about
my and my partner's first kiss
and
are enough.
If that interested you in hearing her story, make sure to stay tuned for episode 3. See you then! This is Connecting the Dots Podcast. Bye!